Sarah Vell was at mile 31 when she stopped running. She had crested the ridgeline, the one exposed quarter mile on the entire back half of the Uhari 50, where the timber dropped away on both sides and the trail ran open in both directions for nearly half a mile. She had run this section in training. She knew what it was supposed to look like. There was something on the trail behind her, 200 yards back, maybe a little more, moving at her pace. She told herself it was another racer catching up. The trail was shared, people caught up. That was the nature of these events. And she started running again. It started running again. She slowed. It slowed. She stopped. It stopped. She stood there for 30 seconds with her watch ticking and the cold November air moving against her damp shirt. And she understood that 30 seconds was time she didn't have to spare at mile 31 of a 50-mile race. Then she started running again, faster than she had moved in 4 hours. It matched her. Sarah had been running ultras for 6 years. She had DNF'd exactly once, a knee failure at mile 42 that announced itself about 3 strides before it became permanent, and she had not DNF'd since. She managed long efforts the same way she managed everything, methodically, without wasted emotion, one segment at a time. Panic was a luxury she had trained out of herself over 1,000 hours on trails. She had started the Uhari 50 at 6 in the morning with 140 other runners. By mile 22, she was running mid-pack, comfortable, on pace for a finish around 10 hours. Around mile 20, she passed a man in a blue jacket. They talked briefly about the mud on the north descent. She pulled ahead. That was the last runner she saw. She didn't think much of it. She ran well alone. She always had. The aid station wasn't at mile 32. She knew the course map well enough to notice before she reached the creek crossing, the terrain not quite matching what she had memorized, landmarks arriving in the wrong order. She crossed the creek anyway and stood on the far bank looking at empty forest where there should have been a tent, a folding table, volunteers in orange vests. Nothing. Just trail and timber and the sound of the creek settling behind her. She ate a gel and kept moving. She told herself the course had been adjusted. She heard it for the first time at mile 29. Not footsteps. She knew footsteps. Hers, other runners, the random percussion of deer moving through brush. This was something else. Heavy, rhythmic, parallel to her line, in the timber on the left side of the trail, keeping pace with her. She ran faster. It kept pace. She slowed. It slowed. She stopped at a switchback, turned, and looked into the timber until her eyes adjusted to the shade between the trunks. Nothing. The sound had stopped. The timber looked like timber. She climbed to the ridgeline and found out what had been in the trees. The thing on the trail behind her was not another runner. She understood this the way you understand something you don't want to be true. In stages, one detail conceding to the next. The height registered first, taller than any person she had seen on a trail, taller than made sense for a body that moved on 2 legs, and the proportions that followed were wrong in ways that compounded the longer she looked. The torso was too narrow, not slim, wrong, compressed to a width that her eye kept trying to correct and couldn't. Above it, a head too small for the body below, angled forward and down, the posture of something tracking a scent off the ground, rather than navigating by sight. The legs were the worst of it. She had spent years studying human biomechanics, analyzing her own stride, understanding how force transferred through bone and muscle over long distance. What moved below that narrow torso violated everything she knew. Too many angles, too many points where the leg changed direction before the foot reached the ground. Additional joints bending in sequences her eye couldn't follow or map onto any anatomy she recognized. And the stride itself. Each step covered more ground than the movement should have produced, as though the relationship between motion and distance operated under its own rules, separate from everything else. She could not see its arms. She looked for them, the natural swing that running produces in every body, and found nothing. The surface where arms should have been was flat and still. Whatever it had in place of arms was tucked against the torso, or absent, or simply not something she could identify from 200 yards. It was not working hard. She could see that from where she stood, and the understanding settled cold in her chest, and she ran. At mile 33, on a long straight descent, she looked back and it was closer, 150 yards, maybe less, close enough that she could see the surface of it. Not skin, something drier than skin, segmented in a way that resolved wrong no matter how her eyes tried to make sense of it. The segments not lining up at the joins, the whole exterior behaving like material that did not bend correctly for the body beneath it. The head had lifted from its forward angle. It was not tracking the ground. It was looking at her. She could not find eyes on the front of that head. No structure that corresponded to anything she could name. But the orientation of the thing was unmistakable. She looked away and ran harder. When she checked again at the next bend, it was back to 200 yards. It had let her open the gap. She did not find that comforting. The math was not on her side, and she knew it, because math was something she did well. 17 miles left. Her legs were carrying 6 hours of accumulated damage. The quad deterioration from the descents, the hip flexor tightening she had been managing since mile 18, the beginning of a calorie deficit from the missed aid station. On flat ground in her current state, she could hold somewhere around 9.5 minutes per mile. Slower on the climbs. 3 hours of running, roughly, if she held herself together. The thing behind her was not going to slow down. She knew this the way she knew when a race had gone past the point of management. Not from a single data point, but from everything accumulated. It had matched every change in her pace without any visible change in effort. She was running as hard as her body could sustain. It was keeping pace as though this required nothing at all. 3 hours of running for her, something else entirely for it. She needed the mile 40 aid station. She needed people. She needed to stop being the only living thing on this trail. She ran. The next 7 miles she would not remember clearly for a long time afterward. She drank from 2 stream crossings without filtering, something she had never done in a race, because stopping to filter meant stopping. She ate her last gel around mile 35, and after that ran on whatever her body had left in reserve. She checked behind her at every bend where the trail straightened enough to see, and it was always there. 200 yards. Never gaining, never falling back. Holding that distance with a consistency that felt deliberate. She thought about the man in the blue jacket once. She thought about where he was and whether it had seen him before it settled on her. She thought about what it meant that it had stayed with her and not him. She came into the mile 40 aid station running past the edge of what running felt like. some system below conscious control still carrying her legs forward, while the part of her that made decisions had narrowed to a single instruction. There were volunteers. There were tables with cups and cut oranges. There were 3 other runners sitting in foil blankets near a propane heater. She ran through the station, turned at the far end, and put her back against a tree with 6 people between herself and the trail she had just come down. She watched the tree line. Nothing came out of the trees. She stood there. A volunteer brought water. She drank it without taking her eyes off the trail. Another volunteer, older, standing slightly apart from the others, was also watching the tree line, not casually, watching it the same way she was watching it, with the same stillness, the same deliberate angle. He noticed her looking at him. He asked if she had seen anything out there, the way he asked it, not curious, not procedural, careful. She told him no. She finished the race. Sarah registered for the U-Hurry 50 the following November under a different name, different race number. She told herself reasons for this that she mostly believed. She finished before noon, off the trail and in her car before 2 in the afternoon, and she did not stop driving until she was home. She found a race report from her original year without looking for it. 3 runners unaccounted for. Course rerouted for the following season. The back section near the ridgeline closed to all foot traffic. No explanation given in any official communication she could locate. She has not run alone since. She does not go out after dark.